Hello and welcome to World News here on TVP World. I'm your host, Diana Skaya. French and British high-ranking military officials arrived in Kyiv on Friday for talks with their Ukrainian counterparts on the possible deployment of troops as part of a ceasefire deal. Now, the talks come after last week's gathering of the so-called Coalition of the Willing, a group of European countries supporting Ukraine in the war against Russia. During the Paris meeting, leaders pledged to strengthen Kyiv's army for future security. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said that even once peace is achieved, maintaining military reassurance will remain essential. President Trump cannot afford for the Ukraine peace process to fail because the world is watching. That's according to a leading Ukrainian politician. Mark Rutte told TVP World on the record that if Donald Trump weakens under pressure from Vladimir Putin, then he can expect China, Iran, and North Korea to be emboldened.
We have been in this ceasefire negotiations with Russia since 2014. Adam, I think it has been more than 200 rounds of negotiations. And this is what I believe President Zelensky was trying to deliver to President Trump, this information, learn from our mistakes, don't get into the same trap. Well, unfortunately, there are some mistakes that people want to repeat themselves. And so right now we see what we see, that President Trump is trying to leave some of the maybe areas of negotiations with Putin. I don't think that he will succeed. However, again, this is on him. He cannot roll back and say, I'm not interested in Ukraine anymore, because it's not only about Ukraine. Right now, Europe, right now, China, Iran, North Korea, and all the other allies, they are just watching of what's going to happen. And I'm absolutely sure that if that will be seen as weakness by the leader of the democratic world, I'm sure that it will lead to some decisions that China will make, that North Korea will make, Iran will make, and it will not be a step towards stability.
Overnight, Russian drone strikes on Kharkiv, the Zaporizhia region, and Dnipro have killed and wounded civilians and severely damaged buildings. Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, has been targeted extensively over the last week.
At least 4 people have been killed and more than 30 wounded in Kharkiv. The city, located only 30 kilometers from the border with Russia, has suffered greatly over the past week, with attacks occurring nearly every night. At least 7 drones were launched across the region of Zaporizhia overnight. Attacks continued in the morning. Authorities say a 63-year-old man and a 70-year-old woman were wounded in the attack. The strike sparked a fire at a store which spread across 100 square meters before being extinguished by firefighters responding to the attack. The local emergency department said the blast also damaged neighbouring houses and vehicles. In the central city of Dnipro, local authorities reported that a mass drone attack left 3 people wounded.
While flying from Washington, D.C. to Florida, Donald Trump was asked about the progress in negotiations on peace in Ukraine. Now, Trump said that so far the European Union was unsuccessful in dealing with Putin, while claiming that he will achieve a diplomatic solution to the conflict with the Kremlin.
We'd like to see that stop as soon as possible, because thousands of people are being killed a week, soldiers, mostly soldiers, and Ukrainian soldiers and Russian soldiers. And you're losing 2,000, 3,000 sometimes a week. So we're spearheading the drive to get it done. Europe has not been successful in dealing with President Putin, but I think I will be successful.
U.S. General Christopher Cavoli confirmed on April 3rd that more F-16 fighter jets are being prepared to be transferred to Ukraine as part of ongoing efforts to bolster the country's air defense. On March 19, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that a new shipment of F-16s had arrived, with more expected later this year. The F-16s play a critical role in defending Ukrainian skies, intercepting Russian missiles, and launching offensive strikes. And while U.S. officials have trained Ukrainian pilots to operate these advanced jets, the aircraft provided so far have mainly come from Northern European nations, including the Netherlands, Denmark, and Norway. The Netherlands has committed 24 F-16s, while Denmark has pledged 19, and Norway has offered between 6 to 22. These jets are expected to significantly strengthen Ukraine's ability to counter Russian aerial threats and carry out strikes on the front lines. Time will tell whether Donald Trump's tariffs will bring business back to the United States, but for now, the American market will experience major difficulties. This is the opinion of Polish Deputy Development and Technology Minister Michał Baranowski, who was a guest on World News Tonight.
His hypothesis, I guess, is that by putting such high tariffs, wall of tariffs around the United States, that companies will decide to produce inside the United States. Now, it's certainly hugely disruptive to the American economy and the global economy. Right now, we are seeing the pain that U.S. economy is going through and the pain it will inflict on other economies. Whether this works for America, we'll know in many, many quarters. It's disrupting supply chains. It is not, well, all economists really have been saying that that's not the way to go about it. U.S. is a sovereign country, but then, of course, will be met with retaliatory measures from countries around the world, and China, for example, has already responded. So is Canada, and EU will be preparing again on Monday for specific measures that will be taken vis-à-vis the United States.
Friday marks the final day of the first ever high-level meeting between the EU and the Central Asian Five. European Council President Antonio Costa and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen are in attendance. The two-day EU Central Asian Summit signals political commitment from both regions to deepening and strengthening their partnership. The summit also offers space to hold bilateral meetings and is centered around shared priorities such as security, trade, and investment. The summit takes place in the face of Russian and Chinese competition and is held in the ancient Uzbek city of Samarkand, for centuries a key hub in East-West connections, trade, and commerce. Authorities in the Czech Republic introduced new measures to try to prevent the spread of foot and mouth disease to the country after the latest outbreak was detected in neighboring Slovakia. Now, animal farms and zoos in the Moravia region of the country have closed their doors to visitors, and new tests on milk and wild animals will be introduced in addition to border control measures. Czech veterinary authorities are on high alert after the contagious disease was detected not far from the country's eastern border. Now, in addition to the ban on live animal transport from Slovakia and Hungary, where the disease is present, Czech officials banned import of meat, bone meal, and processed animal protein from the two countries. The ban also applies to Austrian Burgenland and Upper Austria, which are considered high-risk areas due to their proximity to the disease's outbreak. Similar measures will be introduced by Austria, which on April 5th will close 23 small border crossings with Slovakia and Hungary. The foot and mouth disease primarily affects domestic and wild bovine. Due to its contagiousness, it has a severe impact on the farming industry. It causes significantly lower milk production in cows and can result in lameness or even death of the cattle. South Korea's Constitutional Court has upheld President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment over his declaration of martial law. The court voted unanimously to remove President Yoon from office for violating the South Korean constitution.
The martial law made soldiers who had served their country confront ordinary citizens. Yoon Suk-yeol violated the political neutrality of the armed forces and violated the duty of the head of the armed forces under the constitution. Yoon Suk-yeol, declared martial law, in this case with the aim of breaking the confrontation with the National Assembly, and then deployed military and police to prevent the National Assembly from exercising its constitutional authority, thereby denying national sovereignty and democracy.
The second day of NATO talks in Brussels is well underway. Now, according to the official agenda, 32 foreign ministers are expected to speak with the alliance's Secretary General Mark Rutte about ramping up defense spending and ongoing support for Ukraine. And now we're going to listen to what Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski has said.
We have doubled our spending on defense since Donald Trump took office for the first time. That's impressive. We are going to spend another 800 billion from EU funds. We are doing a lot. We'll do even more. And the tariffs, I understand, are being imposed because Europe is actually very successful and has a trade surplus. But we hope that the United States will also take into account the fact that the US, on the other hand, has a huge surplus in services. And also remember how these surpluses are calculated. So an iPhone, for which the profit eventually makes its way to the United States, is listed in our statistics as coming from China. Also remember that there's a huge outflow of European savings into the United States, which fuels American investment and American prosperity. We are closely interconnected. We are the largest area of common, of cross-business and cross-investment. When something doesn't works well, it shouldn't be damaged.
And that completes this edition of World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching.